The hotel suite was bathed in a warm glow, the faint scent of roses and champagne still lingering from the rehearsal dinner. My wedding dress hung by the window, shimmering under the city lights. Tomorrow, I'd be Mrs. Elena Mitchell. I reached for the vows I had spent months perfecting, wanting to read them one last time before bed. But as I picked up the neatly stacked papers, my fingers grazed another envelope, one I didn't recognize. Frowning, I pulled it out. Thick, expensive paper. My S-name, Nathan Reid, printed in bold letters. My stomach fluttered. Maybe it was a surprise letter from him. Smiling, I unfolded the document. But the moment my eyes scanned the words, my breath hitched. Certificate of divorce. The paper trembled in my hands. Nathan Reid and Elena Carter, finalized 3 weeks ago. Divorce, 3 weeks ago. My vision blurred as I flipped through the pages. Dates, signatures, legal stamps. This wasn't a mistake. I couldn't breathe. My soon-to-be husband had been married recently, and he never told me. The air in the suite turned, suffocating. My engagement ring, which had felt so perfect on my finger just hours ago, now burned against my skin. I forced myself to take a shaky breath, my pulse pounding in my ears. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe it wasn't. What it looked like just then. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I grabbed it with trembling hands. One new message from an unknown number. Sweetheart, I hope you're ready for tomorrow. Marrying Nathan was the worst mistake of my life. Be smart, run while you can. The blood in my veins turned to ice. I gasped as the suite door creaked open. Elena. Nathan's voice was soft, affectionate, but now it sent a shiver down my spine. I spun around, clutching the divorce papers against my chest. His brows furrowed as he stepped inside. What's wrong? I could barely hear my own voice as I whispered, "You were married." Nathan's eyes flickered to the papers in my hands, and then he smirked. "I never said you were my first wife." The morning sun streamed through the curtains of my apartment as I buttoned up my silk robe and walked to the kitchen. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and I couldn't help but smile. Today was my last day as Elena Carter. Tomorrow, I would be Elena Reid. I twirled the diamond ring on my finger, feeling its smooth surface against my skin. Nathan Reid, my perfect man. We had met a year ago at a charity gala. I had been standing awkwardly by the dessert table, overwhelmed by the crowd of socialites. And then, there he was, charming, confident, and completely mesmerizing. Nathan was everything I had ever dreamed of, successful, romantic, and deeply in love with me. At least, that's what I had believed. Morning, beautiful. His deep voice snapped me out of my thoughts. I turned to see him leaning against the doorway, his hair still damp from the shower, a playful smirk dancing on his lips. I grinned. "Morning, future husband." He walked over, wrapping his arms around my waist, pressing a soft kiss against my forehead. His cologne, crisp and familiar, filled my senses. "I can't believe it's finally happening," I whispered. "Tomorrow, we'll be married." Nathan chuckled, his grip tightening around me. "I've waited my whole life for this moment, Elena." I melted into him, my heart swelling with happiness. This was love. This was real. Or so I thought. That afternoon, I met my best friend, Mia, for brunch. "Are you nervous?" she asked, sipping on her iced latte. I shook my head, twirling my spoon in my coffee. "Not at all. Nathan is perfect. I'm the luckiest woman alive." Mia tilted her head, watching me closely. "I don't know, Elena. You ever notice how he avoids talking about his past?" I laughed. "He's just private, Mia. Not everyone likes to spill their history." She frowned. "Still, you're about to marry the guy, and you barely know about his family, his childhood, or..." I waved her off. "Mia, stop worrying. Nathan loves me. That's all that matters." I believed those words. I needed to. But later that evening, a shadow of doubt crept into my mind. Nathan had been acting distant, not in an obvious way. He still kissed me, held me, told me he loved me, but there were moments where I caught him staring at me, his expression unreadable, moments where his phone would ring, and he'd silence it immediately, like now, as we sat in our suite, finalizing last-minute wedding details. His phone vibrated on the table. He glanced at it, stiffened, and flipped it over. I frowned. Who was that? Just work, he said too quickly. A lie. I studied his face, but before I could press further, he leaned in and kissed me. Distraction, and just like that, my worries melted away. He loved me. That was all that mattered, or so I told myself. But in less than 24 hours, I would realize the truth. Nathan wasn't just hiding a past, he was hiding another life. The night before my wedding should have been magical. Instead, it felt like a storm was brewing, silent, heavy, waiting to crash down on me. Nathan had left for the night, insisting it was bad luck to see the bride before the wedding. I had smiled, kissed him goodbye, and watched as he walked out of the suite, leaving me alone with my thoughts. But I wasn't alone for long. At exactly 10:45 p.m., a sharp knock echoed through the room. Frowning, I set my wine glass down and walked to the door. Maybe it was room service. But when I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. A woman stood there, tall, elegant, dark hair cascading over her shoulders. Her lips curled into a knowing smile. "You must be Elena," she said smoothly, as if we were old friends. I blinked. Yes. Can I help you? She tilted her head. Actually, I think I'm here to help you. Before I could react, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. Thick, legal paper. She handed it to me. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it, and then my world shattered. A marriage certificate, Nathan Reid and Isabel Carter, dated 6 months ago. I stumbled backward, my heart slamming against my ribs. No, this isn't real. The woman Isabel sighed, crossing her arms. Oh, sweetheart, it's very real. I shook my head. This was a mistake, a prank, a sick joke. He never mentioned you, I whispered. Isabel let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. Of course, he didn't. Nathan never does. You're not the first, Elena, and you sure as hell won't be the last. Her words stabbed through me like a knife. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was lying, but I couldn't, because deep down, I knew. The late-night phone calls, the way he dodged questions about his past, the flicker of something unreadable in his eyes whenever I told him how much I loved him. It was all a lie. I forced myself to look up at her. If you two were married, why are you here now? She smirked. Because, sweetheart, I made the same mistake you're about to make, and now I'm making sure it doesn't happen again. I swallowed hard. Are you saying he? She leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. Nathan only marries women for what they can give him. Money, power, reputation, and when he's done, he moves on. I felt my stomach churn. No, that's not possible. Nathan loves me. Isabel sighed, shaking her head. That's what I thought too. Her words settled like a dead weight in my chest. Good luck tomorrow, Elena, she murmured, before turning on her heel and walking away, leaving me standing in the doorway, shattered, shaking, broken. I barely slept that night. Nathan's words, his promises, his level of it, played in my head like a cruel joke. Was Isabel telling the truth? Had everything been a lie? By morning, my heart was a battlefield of doubt and desperation. But there was only one way to know for sure. So, with shaking hands, I grabbed Nathan's phone from his nightstand, and I searched. Messages, emails, bank statements, and then, buried beneath a folder labeled work documents, I found it. A series of emails, from Isabel, from another woman named Chloe, from 3 others, I didn't recognize. Each one told the same story. Each one ended in heartbreak. My breath came in short gasps. Nathan had done this before, over and over again. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. Instead, I did the only thing I could. I put on my wedding dress, and I walked down the aisle, because if Nathan thought he could betray me and walk away unscathed, he had no idea who he was dealing with. My wedding dress felt heavier than ever as I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. White, pure, elegant, a complete lie. Nathan had been lying to me for months, or maybe from the very beginning. And yet, here I was, wearing a dress meant for a fairy tale that no longer existed. My hands trembled as I reached up to adjust my veil. I should run. I should cancel everything. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed answers. I needed to hear the truth from him. A soft knock on the door made me jump. My heart pounded against my ribs as I turned. My maid of honor, Mia, peeked inside. "You ready?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. "Ready?" "No." But I had no choice. The ceremony was a blur. The aisle felt endless, my breath shallow with every step. Nathan stood at the altar, looking devastatingly handsome in his tailored black suit. The man I loved. The man I no longer knew. His smile was warm, his eyes glistening with emotion, or maybe just another performance. As I reached him, he took my hands, squeezing them gently. "You're breathtaking," he whispered. I flinched at his touch. How many other women had heard these same words? How many had fallen for them? The officiant began speaking, but I barely heard a word. My mind raced, my body numb. "Do you, Elena Carter, take Nathan Reid to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Silence. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Nathan squeezed my fingers again, this time firmer. His grip possessive, controlling as if he knew something was wrong. I hesitated then, forcing the biggest lie I'd ever told. I whispered, "I do." The reception was grand. Laughter, champagne, toasts filled with love and admiration. Nathan stayed by my side, his arm around my waist. To the world, we were the perfect couple, but I was drowning. Every time I looked at him, I saw the truth. I saw Isabel's smirk, the emails, the lies woven into the fabric of our relationship. And yet, Nathan acted as if nothing had changed, because to him, nothing had dot. As we danced beneath the chandelier, he leaned close. "You're quiet tonight," he murmured. I forced a smile, just overwhelmed. His eyes darkened slightly, as if he didn't quite believe me. "You trust me, don't you?" he asked suddenly, his voice smooth, persuasive. A test. I swallowed hard, forcing my expression to stay neutral. "Of course," he smiled, pulling me closer. "Good. I never want you to doubt me, Elena." Too late for that. Later that night, when the guests had left and the suite was silent, Nathan poured 2 glasses of wine. "To us," he said, handing me one. I took it, but my fingers barely curled around the stem. I wasn't sure if I could stomach anything he touched. He took a sip, then set his glass down. His gaze lingered on me. "You've been distant tonight." I forced out a soft laugh. "Just tired." He tilted his head. "Are you sure, that's all?" I hesitated just a second too long. His jaw twitched. Then, suddenly, he smirked. Something in his expression shifted. The warmth faded, replaced by something colder, sharper. And I realized in that moment, Nathan knew. He knew I had found something, but he wasn't panicking. He wasn't apologizing. No, he was waiting, watching, wondering just how much I had uncovered. And that was when I knew. Nathan wasn't just a liar, he was dangerous. The air in the honeymoon suite was thick with tension. Nathan's eyes studied me like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve, his fingers lazily tracing the rim of his wine glass. I knew I should have played it cool, acted like nothing was wrong, but my skin crawled under his gaze. He knew something. He just didn't know how. Machin, I was running out of time. I set my glass down. I'm going to take a shower. Nathan smirked. Don't be too long, Mrs. Reid. The night's just beginning. My stomach twisted. I didn't even want to hear my new last name. I walked into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. The second I turned on the water, I grabbed my phone and opened the folder of evidence I had saved. Screenshots of messages, the marriage certificate, the email from Isabel.proof.I had everything I needed to destroy him. But what now? How did I escape a man who had done this before, who had perfected this game? A vibration in my palm made me flinch. A new message. Unknown number. Check the hotel lobby. Hurry. My breath hitched. Was it Isabel? Someone else? A warning? A setup? I didn't have time to think. I grabbed a robe, wrapped it around me, and quietly slipped out of the bathroom. Nathan was on the balcony, speaking into his phone in a low voice. I took my chance. Grabbing the key card, I slipped out of the suite and made my way to the lobby. The moment I stepped off the elevator, my pulse spiked. A woman sat in the corner, watching me, not Isabel. Someone else. She stood when she saw me. Elena. I nodded cautiously. She exhaled, glancing around before handing me a flash drive. You need to leave him. Now. I blinked. Who are you? Chloe, she whispered. The woman before Isabel. My stomach dropped. I should have warned her before it was too late, she said. But I won't make that mistake again. I tightened my grip on the flash drive. What's on this? Her eyes darkened. Proof that Nathan isn't just a liar. He's a conman, and you're his latest target. A shiver ran down my spine. What do you mean? She swallowed hard. He marries women who come from money or power, gets access to their accounts, their businesses, their inheritance. Then he ruins them financially, emotionally, legally. My blood turned cold. He drains them dry, she continued. Then he makes sure they're too broken to fight back. I felt like I was going to be sick. But I'm not rich, I whispered. I don't. Chloe's expression turned grim. Not yet. But your father is. And Nathan has already started transferring assets under his name. The room spun. No, this couldn't be real. But deep down, I knew it was. Nathan had never wanted me. He wanted my father's wealth. My hands shook as I clutched the flash drive. Why are you helping me? Chloe's jaw tightened. Because when I found out the truth, I had nothing left to fight him with. She turned to leave, but stopped. Don't make the same mistake I did. End it before he does. And just like that she was gone. I returned to the suite in a daze. Nathan was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone. When he looked up, his smirk faded. Where did you go? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Stay calm, stay smart. Just needed some air. His eyes flickered with suspicion. You look pale. I forced a smile. Just nerves. A pause. Then, slowly, he stood, stepping toward me. I fought the urge to back away. His fingers brushed my cheek, his touch deceptively gentle. You're not having second thoughts, are you? Every muscle in my body screamed at me to run. But instead, I smiled, and I lied. Of course not. His smirk returned, but his grip on my wrist tightened just slightly. He was still watching me, still testing me, but he had no idea that I had just passed my own test. Because now, I knew the truth. Nathan Reid wasn't just a liar. He was a predator, and tomorrow, I would be the one to destroy him. I lay in bed that night, my heart pounding so loudly I was afraid Nathan could hear it. His arm was draped over my waist, his breath steady as he slept beside me. I needed to get out. I needed to act. But I had to be smart. Nathan was a master manipulator. If I made one wrong move, he'd twist it, turn it against me, and trap me in his web like he had done to Isabel, Chloe, the others. Not this time. I had the flash drive. I had the proof. And now, I had a plan. The next morning, I woke up before Nathan. I moved quietly, slipping out of bed and grabbing my phone. I sent one message to Dad. Meet me at the venue. Urgent. Don't tell anyone. Then, I erased the message. By the time Nathan stirred, I was already dressed, sipping coffee on the balcony like nothing was wrong. Morning. Mrs. Reid, he murmured, wrapping his arms around me from behind. I forced a smile, even as my stomach churned. This was the last time he would ever touch me. Morning, I said, keeping my voice light. Are you ready for the big wedding brunch? His lips curled into a smirk. Of course. Though, I think I prefer our private celebration last night. I bit my tongue. Just a little longer. The brunch was packed with guests, journalists, and business partners. My father was there, exactly where I had asked him to be. Nathan, ever the charming groom, played his part well, laughing, shaking hands, kissing my cheek, like we were the perfect couple. He had no idea his world was about to collapse. As guests took their seats, I stood and clinked my glass. Everyone, I said, my voice clear, steady. I just want to say a few words. Nathan turned to me, a small crease forming between his brows. He hadn't expected this. Good. I took a deep breath and smiled sweetly. Then, I detonated the bomb. I want to thank you all for being here today, I began. It means so much to have our closest family and friends celebrating this new chapter of our lives. Nathan relaxed beside me. He thought this was just another speech. I tightened my grip on the microphone. But before we continue, I said, my tone shifting, I want to share something I discovered last night. A hush fell over the room. Nathan's hand froze on my back. I turned to him, meeting his gaze. His smirk faltered. I wasn't the first, was I? I asked, my voice light deadly. His entire body tensed. A murmur rippled through the guests. Nathan, I continued, tilting my head. Tell me, how many times have you done this? His smile returned, but it was strained now. Elena, sweetheart, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I pulled out my phone and, with a single click, connected it to the event's projector. And then I played the recordings. Nathan's voice filled the venue. She's got more than Isabel did. This one actually loves me. She never see it coming. A gasp shot through the crowd. Then, another voice, Olivia. So, who gets the money this time? Relax, babe. We can work this out. Whispers turned into outrage. My father's face darkened. Journalists scrambled for their cameras. Nathan's empire, his entire illusion, was crumbling in front of him. Nathan lunged toward me, furious now. Turn that off. Nathan lunged toward me, rage flashing in his eyes. Turn that off, he hissed through clenched teeth, reaching for my phone. But I stepped back just out of his grasp. Why? I asked, tilting my head, afraid they'll hear the truth. The guests murmured louder, eyes wide with shock, disbelief, and growing anger. My father had risen from his seat, his jaw set in stone. The journalists were already broadcasting live. Nathan turned, scanning the room like a trapped animal. His carefully curated life was collapsing in real time. He laughed a hollow, desperate sound. This is ridiculous. She's twisting things. Elena, you don't understand, don't I? I cut him off. Because I think Chloe, Isabel, and Olivia would all agree I understand perfectly. His face paled at the mention of their names. I took another step forward, my voice clear and unwavering. You used me. You used all of them. You marry women, gain their trust, steal their wealth and connections, then move on to the next victim. He scoffed, shaking his head. You're paranoid, really. I raised an eyebrow, then lifted the flash drive Chloe had given me. Because I have bank records, fake contracts, transfers from my father's company into your hidden accounts. Nathan froze. That was it. the final nail in his coffin. The gasps in the room turned to accusations. "Nathan, is this true?" someone called out. His business partner stood, his expression dark. "You stole from me, too, didn't you?" Nathan's confidence shattered. His hands balled into fists. He turned to me, pure fury in his eyes. "You set me up." I smiled, my heart pounding but my voice calm. "You did that yourself." Then I lifted my phone and pressed send. A second later, every guest's phone chimed at once. "What?" Nathan stammered, his eyes darting around as people began opening messages, his face drained of color. "Evidence," I said sweetly, "sent to everyone here. Oh, and to the police." The silence that followed was deafening. Then the doors burst open. 2 officers strode in, followed by a lawyer and a furious-looking Isabel. Nathan whirled around. "Wait, this is insane. You can't. You're under arrest, Mr. Reid," the officer interrupted, "for fraud, embezzlement, and multiple counts of financial deception." Nathan took a step back, panic finally seeping in. No, this is a mistake." He turned to me, pleading now. "Elena, please." But I just stared at him, no mercy, no regret, no love. The officers grabbed him, snapping handcuffs around his wrists. "Elena," he shouted as they dragged him away. "You ruined me." I tilted my head, watching as he fought against the inevitable, and I whispered, just loud enough for him to hear, "You never should have underestimated me." Aftermath fallout was brutal. Nathan's business collapsed overnight. Investors pulled out. Former partners filed lawsuits. The press ripped him apart. Chloe, Isabel, and the other women joined forces. With the evidence I provided, they filed a class action lawsuit. Nathan would never con another woman again, and me. I walked away, not just from Nathan, but from the pain, the lies, the betrayal. A month later, I was sitting at a small cafe, sipping my coffee, when my phone buzzed. A new email from Nathan Reid. "Please, Elena, just listen." I stared at it for a moment. Then, without hesitation, I blocked him, and for the first time in months, Sai smiled, because I had won, and Nathan, he had nothing left.